Hi everyone again, and in that lesson in that section we're gonna talk all about SD-WAN. And in order to set it up properly, you actually need to understand what exactly is SD-WAN, and we are gonna have to change our topology a little bit, especially our interfaces on FortiGate device. So I'm going to explain what is SD-WAN while we go through a setup. It's going to make more sense. So first, we're going to click Network SD-WAN, and over here is our general panel where we work with that product. So we have three tabs here. The very first tab here is SD-WAN zones, and why we need that. So basically we have network interfaces. When we click network interfaces, I'm going to show you that after. We get these interfaces and aggregate them to work as one. So a basic example would be, let's say you have two ports with two different internet providers. And if one provider goes down, you want to make sure that the second provider takes over, transparently, so you don't notice that. So this way you don't lose traffic. So you kind of an automatic process where the traffic is redirected to another link. So in SD-WAN zones, we're gonna add these network interfaces into one zone. The second tab here is SD-WAN rules. And in that tab, we have a policy dedicated for our SD-WAN. There are a lot of rules that we can apply and a lot of objects, and we're gonna go in detail in our rules, so you can understand it. So we're gonna do that in practice. And the last tab here that we have is called performance SLA. This is where we define SLA targets. And what I mean by that, so we can define a target where, if on one link, let's say your port 1 is your external interface, if it has, huge latency, when we hit that latency threshold, it means our policy will be applied. And in performance SLA, we kind of create that SLA target, and then we use that in the SD-WAN rules. So the next thing we have to pay attention to is our network interfaces. One quick note I want to point out over here is port 1 and port 5 are my two external interfaces. These are two different internet service providers. One of my external ports used to be port 2, but because I had to make a lot of changes on my switches and routers, I had to change it to port 1 and added extra internet service provider in port 5. But you can leave it as port 2, it doesn't matter, as long as you understand you are working with external ports that are connected to the internet. Another really important thing that we need to consider is routes. Because we've added another internet service provider, another port, we need to add another default gateway, and we already have one, leaving through our port 1. We are adding another one via our port 2. And your route should look like you see it on the screen. The destination 000/0. The gateway IP is 5.104.221, but you're gonna have your own gateway IP. It's going through my port 1. So another line that I have here is not destination, is going through port 5. It's another internet service provider. All right, and now we're gonna go back to our SD-WAN tab, and we're gonna create new SD-WAN zone. So we're gonna give it a name. Let's go for SD-WAN. All right, let's actually give a name SD-WAN outside, because we're gonna face the outside network, the internet, with these ports. So SD-WAN outside. And interface members, we're gonna click a plus sign, and then I'm gonna go for create. But okay, plus sign, create, and then we have to choose our port 1 and port 5 as well. So let's choose port 1 and an SD-WAN zone. We have to click SD-WAN outside. We're gonna leave gateway cost and priority as default. So we're gonna click OK. So we have just added one port. And if we go to interfaces and click on our port 1, you're gonna see two references, meaning we already have a route, which is one reference, and another reference is it's been added to SD-WAN. All right, one quick important note here, since I'm here and I didn't talk about that. When you create another route for another internet service provider, using different port, the administrative distance has to be the same. So the traffic is balanced between two of them. If you give different values, there will be a priority for the interface with a lower administrative distance value. So if I have 10 here and 20 on another interface, so there is a priority for that interface. But since we are, and that's totally fine for certain scenarios, but when we are working with SD-WAN, the value should be the same because the traffic needs to be balanced between two of them. If that is the case, if you want to use SD-WAN technology and you want to use one internet service provider without balancing the traffic, that's totally fine. You still have to use the same value for both routes in static route. And how you're gonna manage your links, you do that in SD-WAN rules, not in routes. So that's the point of the technology. It's way easier to use it in SD-WAN rules. All right, and the next obvious step we're gonna do, we're gonna add port 5 to our SD-WAN outside zone. So in order to do that, the same idea, the same process, we're gonna click it, double click, then click a plus sign, create, and go for port 5 in other service provider, choosing our SD-WAN zone, and right click and choosing port 5. Okay, so now we have it added in our SD-WAN zone. So the next obvious step we have to do, we need somehow to manage that. We need to understand what is going on. So we have actually a couple widgets here to see what ports I used for download and upload bandwidth. All right, so we're gonna go for performance SLA and create a basic regular SLA target. So our link's gonna hit, and if something goes beyond the threshold, it will change the behavior. So we're gonna give it a name, like SLA for SD-WAN check, or SD-WAN link. So let's call it SLA check for WAN connection. The probe mode will be active, and we're gonna ping 8.8.8.8. We can add more service if you want to, but it's fine because I'm able to ping it, so I'm gonna use that as my ping method. Okay, we're gonna have SLA target as disabled for now. The link status check interval is 500 milliseconds, failure before inactive 5, restore link after 5 checks. And we're gonna go for update static route. It will update the static route. If one of the links goes down, we're gonna have another route. After that, click OK, and down here below we have added that line, SLA check for WAN, detect server is 8888, and when you give it a couple seconds, it's going to be updated with the green arrows saying the packet loss in percentage, the latency that you have, and jitter. So these three options that we are paying attention to over here. If one of them goes down, or if there is a problem with one of them, there will be you will see that in a widget. So another link will take over. So now let's go for SD-WAN rules, and we're gonna create a rule basically for choosing a best link. So I want to choose the best quality link out of my two internet service providers. So I'm gonna call it best quality link. Best quality, okay. And then we have to choose our source, and as my source I can use either all, or I can select a specific subnet that I want to apply that rule specifically to, while other subnets won't be targeted with that SD-WAN rule. But I'm going to leave it as default, so everything will be applied, all the subnets that I have. As the destination, I'm going to click all, and in the outgoing interface, I'm going to choose best quality. And interface preference, I'm using port 1 and port 2. So over here in the measured SLA, you can choose something that we have created in our performance SLA target. It's gonna check links according to the SLA preference that we have created. And down below we have quality criteria, and we're gonna choose latency. So all right, really briefly, let me explain what is going on here. We have two internet service providers, port 1 and port 2, and I want to choose the best quality link and use that as my main. I would go in the interface. If one interface goes down, for some reason that ISP goes down, I want another ISP to take over. So I'm using best quality over here, and in measured SLA, I'm choosing the SLA target that I have created. So I'm pinging 8888. If one of the ports is not able to ping that server, it will go down, another will take over. So, and it will measure that to latency. So if a latency is bad, if one link, is better when, it comes to latency, it will take over. That link will be chosen with the best latency. Another common scenario that we have in SD-Wan is balancing the traffic between two internet service providers. And in order to do that, you need to change best quality to maximize bandwidth. So we're going to give a name load balance or something like that, because this is what I want to do. And as I mentioned, the only difference is that we're changing for maximize bandwidth. So we're going to use two ports to balance traffic. So there are a lot of ideas, a lot of scenarios that you can implement and choose from. You can utilize the resources from your both internet service providers. You can choose the best link and only use one unless that link goes down. So this is the final configuration that I want to have in my environment. So I'm going to use best quality and interface preference port 1, port 5, measured SLA check for WAN, the one that we created, pinging 8888, and the quality criteria is packet loss. So it means if I'm not able to ping that server, the link will be switched. So it will be switched, and if I'm able to ping it again after a specific time, then it's fine. I can move back if there is no packet loss. So as you can see, this is how it looks in SD-Wan policy, and there you go. We have traffic, the download traffic and the upload traffic in our both ports. So it basically means we are pinging 8888. There is some traffic going on, so both links are working just fine.